Hey everybody, welcome to Rob's Game Group on YouTube. I'm Rob, the Dungeon Pastor, and that means that I am a Dungeon Master that cares more about the past of role-playing games than I do the future. I'm going to be your host through a series of videos where we talk about role-playing games, board games, miniature games, and sometimes we're just on here having fun. I hope that you enjoy the kind of content that I put out, and if you do, well, maybe you could support the channel. How can you do that? Well, most importantly, I would like for you to like, share, subscribe. Those little clicks from you mean a lot to me. Also, you can visit my Redbubble store, where I'm constantly putting up merchandise. Only a little on there now, but we're working to get more. We also have the Amazon wish list you can go on to for Rob's Game Group, and if you see product on there that you want to see me review or do a look at the book at, you can purchase it. Amazon will do the work, ship it to me. Helps me help you get videos that you want to see. You can also contact me on Facebook at Rob's Game Group. Links to all of this stuff will be in the description of each video. And hey, speaking of videos, let's check this one out. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of White Box Weekly. This is episode 3, I believe. Yeah. This is White Box Weekly is mainly a weekly video about White Box, and right now it is covering my Tuesday night game that I run, which is I'm using the White Box system to run a Ravenloft game where the Domain and Dark Lord are Lovecraftian tied. And I'm not going to go in every episode over the house rules that I used and the books that I used and the story so far. If you want to see all that, check out the playlist for White Box. All of my videos are in there. You can go back and watch them, at your leisure. So I'm just going to recap this week's game. Let's see. So when we picked up this week, the group was headed over to the diner to get some food. Which they found to be a rather dirty, unpleasant place with a kind of big mean lady running the joint. And every meal, because fish is so abundant here, is fish and something. Fish and grits, or baked fish, or fish and eggs. The more unappealing fish and something I could come up with, the more of it I threw in there. I think the only exception to that was the cornbread, which Nate's halfling really enjoyed. Let's see, they sat down, they ate, they discussed going to get a room at the Gilman house, and then heading out to the above the North Docks to the ruins to see if they could track down Zadok Allen. So they ate, they ended up going up the street. They stopped before going in the Gilman house and kind of eyeballed the church, which is north of it. And they were seeing how many people were coming and going and whatever, and decided to go on in to the Gilman house. This is late afternoon. The fellow working the counter there, very much the big non-blinking eyes, wide fishy-like mouth, was working the counter, but he was dressed in a very tux like or concierge type outfit, and they only had one row of rooms upstairs, and he rented them. They rented 2 rooms, and he rented them. They were just thinking automatically that they would get 2 adjacent rooms, but they just, hey, give us 2 rooms. So he gave them room 2 and room 8 upstairs. And when they asked if they could have rooms adjacent, he claimed that the inn was pretty much full, so there was no way he could give them adjacent rooms, even though they didn't see anybody else around. So standing there in front of him, and this didn't occur to them until later, they did discuss how they were going to break up who was sleeping in room 2 and who was sleeping in room 8. Now, keep in mind, there are five female characters. This is important for later. And 3 male characters. Race isn't important, just male and female at this point. So they do end up going upstairs. They see the rooms are adequate. Inside each room is a couple of beds, a wash basin, a window facing out to the north, and a door to the adjoining room, which won't do them any good since their rooms aren't adjacent to each other. But they did look everything over, and they were very adamant about, yeah, I'm not leaving my stuff here. I'm just going to keep carrying everything on me until we come back to go to sleep. I'm like, okay, cool. So they leave, they go out. So actually, while they were up there, they changed their mind about how they were going to split the rooms up, because they wanted to have a male fighter in each of the rooms. Like, I guess the females couldn't defend themselves or whatever, but they ended up swapping things around, and most of the females were in room 8, but the barbarian dwarf was in there with them, the halfling too, and everybody else was the other male monster hunter was in room 2. So that's how they were going to break the rooms up. They left there. They went out as if they were kind of sightseeing. They roamed up the docks. The further up the coast they got, the less people they saw. And as they were walking the beach north of the docks, or northwest of the docks, towards the kind of natural staircase that would lead up to the bluff where the ruins are, they ran across a cave and decided to go in and check it out. While they were in this cave, they found out real quickly that they could not even really see the ground in this cave. There was so many bones. And didn't appear to be human bones. It was all like skeletal fish bones, like something had just been in here eating raw fish and throwing the bones down. Stunk like crazy. But they pushed on into the cave. It did open up into one bigger chamber, so it wasn't like a cave complex. It was literally just, an entryway and then one big room. Fish bones are everywhere. As they're kind of like rummaging through, looking around, they do find a small wooden chest that's half buried in the back of the cave, and they dig it up. They open the thing, and as they open it up, they find inside of it some stuff's wrapped up in like a leather material and bound with twine, and they don't open it there. They just take it with them because they don't know what it is or why it got put here. Now the wizard did cast detect magic, and he didn't pick up anything magic, and even though there was magic stuff in there, but I'll explain why I did it that way later on. So they continue out of the cave because it stinks. They want to get out of there. They didn't see anything else useful. All they know is something has been using this cave to eat, and they didn't want to be here when it got back. So they continued up the natural staircase or stairway up to the bluffs, and they roamed around the ruins, which were pretty dilapidated. Remember, they had bought a bottle of whiskey because they had been told that Zadok was basically the oldest guy in town. There weren't a lot of old people, and he was the town drunk. And the more you gave him to drink, the looser his lips would get. And so they're walking around kind of flashing the fact that they've got this bottle of whiskey. And I had Zadok, he was up in the ruins because that's where he squats at, see them coming, and on my end of it, I had him looking, watching them, and I'm like, okay, well, I didn't know they were going to be like flashing the bottle. Well, as soon as they started doing that, I'm like, okay, well, this dude will definitely come down and talk to them. So he does. He approaches. He's very shy at first, but he approaches them, and they get to talking back and forth, and he gives them a little bit of information, but like they were told, the more they give him to drink, the more he talks. And he ends up telling them the history of the town from his point of view, and what this plague was that came through years ago and wiped out all the old people wasn't really a plague. His story is pretty fantastical, and most people in town just think he's nuts. But the history that he gave them was that the town had been founded by this merchant who had ships, and his name was Adab Marsh. And on one of his trips back from some foreign land, he had brought something back with him, and it led him to, and he points out into the bay about a mile out, there's a big reef, and it's called Devil's Reef. And he claims that there are creatures that live on and under in the water on Devil's Reef, and they're fishmen type creatures, and that old Adab had cut some kind of deal with them. So he comes back, and basically what happens is he ends up starting to form this cult. And over the years it picks up, and his grandson, who now runs the town, who is now known as Old Man Marsh, definitely is tied to this cult, which is the esoteric order of Dagon that has taken over the church here. And Zadok tells him how they've taken over churches in other towns in the Isle of Arkham, and they kind of spread like wildfire. And let's see, they keep talking. He tells them all this. He tells them that the plague wasn't really a plague. It was the older folk who had come under the sway of the church had been talked into performing this series of rituals, which made them, kind of gave them that Innsmouth look that I described in the last video. And eventually the final ritual caused a lot of the older people to turn and like into full-on deep ones basically, and go out to the sea and live. And there had been some kind of arrangement between the creatures that lived out there that worshipped Dagon, and he could not pronounce it in any form. He just kept saying Chachulu, Cachillo, something like that. He wasn't real good with pronunciations. But anyway, they had cut some kind of deal and passing it down generation to generation. These people were basically making sacrifices. They would take local women that either lived there or that they kidnapped down to the ocean to be brood mothers for these deep ones, who would, come ashore, very humanoids from the deep like, and breed with these women, who would have children that seemed normal until they reached adolescence, and then they would start taking on the Innsmouth look appearance. And as they got older and older, they would eventually shed this form, become deep ones, and go out into the ocean. It is a pretty weird story, and they weren't 100% sure how much of it they believed, but he seemed genuine, drunk, but genuine about it. They ended up giving him the rest of the bottle. He said that he was still there because he considered it some form of devil worship, and he refused to take part in it. So he did not complete the final ritual, and that's the other reason that he's considered an outcast in the town. Well, they say their goodbyes to Zadok, who is, he's disheveled. He's in rough shape anyway. They go back because it's getting late. He does warn them multiple times, don't be out at night, especially the women. So they go back to the Gilman house, separate up in their rooms. They discuss kind of how they're going to break up doing watches. And in both rooms on first watch are the dwarf brothers, and they are watching out the window, kind of watching the church. Now remember, they were told that the church became really active on the last day of the month and the mid-month, and that this was the last day of the month. So they're watching, and this church does at night, it starts, more and more of these robed figures start showing up outside the church and chanting and so on and so forth. And this goes on for hours. And around midnight, the room that supposedly only had the females in it. They had moved beds and trunks and stuff in front of the doors to keep them from being opened and surprised. The dwarf on guard noticed that somebody tried the door in the hallway, but as soon as it met resistance, they stopped. And then he heard footsteps from the adjacent room, and they tried the inner door, and as soon as they met resistance, they stopped. That was the only trying to get in the room they did, and they didn't try it in the other room, only room 8. About this same time, the bell is ringing at the church. It's around midnight. There's all these people out there in their robes chanting and torchlights and stuff, and the dwarves that are on watch see a group of these guys leading 3 females in white nightgowns that seem to be either chained or tied together towards the north docks. However, once they get, down off the hill from the church and behind some buildings, they kind of lose sight of them and they can't see them anymore. So the group ends up getting back together at this point. Everybody's waking up. They're trying to figure out why they tried that room instead of this room, and they're like, well, maybe it's because it had more girls in it. And I'm like, this is when I remind them, well, you also divvied up who was staying in what room in front of the Gilman House concierge guy downstairs. So maybe if he was involved in it, he thought that there were only females in that room, not realizing that they could probably handle themselves. They went back and forth about whether they should go intervene and try to save these women, and then decided, no, not to. Just gonna wait and see what happens. So eventually, like an hour or so later, maybe 2 hours later, these women get brought back to the church. Their nightgowns in tatters, they can barely walk, and they are taken inside the church. And then the congregation outside the church, the chanting kind of slows and stops, and it ends up breaking up. I mean, but it doesn't fully break up and shut down until like 4 in the morning. So we enter into the next day, and the group gets up. They go to have some fish and eggs for breakfast, and they go back to the general store to talk to Tommy, basically to confirm some information he had given them, and to buy some clothes and boots for Zadok Allen. One of the players really wanted to take him some fresh stuff because they felt sorry for him. And they went by the bar again to get another bottle of whiskey. The bar was empty at this point. The bartender was really, really tired. He was just heavy bags under his eyes. And the players, again, when they try to talk to him, he's very nasty, very mind your own business kind of thing. And let's see, where did they go from there? They left the bar. They discussed maybe they did get close enough to the church to realize there was only one cultist guarding the door, and he looked like he was half asleep. But they got close enough to cast Detect Chaos, the cleric did, and the wizard was trying to locate object and locate one of the nightgowns. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're within range. You realize it's still in the church. He's like, oh God, these women are still in there somewhere. And obviously he's pushing for, we need to go rescue these women. And most of the party is like, yeah, no. They're just not wanting to get involved. Like, they are avoiding going in that church, which is, probably a good thing, because it's going to be a dangerous situation when they do go in there. But the cleric, my wife's character who detected chaos, I did this whole scene with her where she goes into a trance, and she's having visions, of almost like flying just above water levels, just screaming across the ocean towards this island of black-green rock, and all these weird angles that the rock and everything is in. And just before she gets there, she comes out of the trance, completely feeling like she is just covered in chaos. So yeah, there's chaos all over the place here, especially the church. So after that, they went back to find Zadok Allen, and they went down to the beach. And as they're walking up the beach above the North Docks, passing by that cave they went into, they still don't see any activity, but they're passing by there. But as they're getting up to where the natural staircase is that leads up to the bluff, they see that somebody freshly has put these big oak poles in the ground in the beach. And they go over and they start checking them out. There are 8 of them. And there are manticles tied or hooked to the top of each of these. So people were chained up here. And they can tell from the prints around it and everything how the first 3 had been used recently. Somebody had been hooked up here recently. The other 5 don't have any disturbance around them really to speak of. And that's when it kind of clicks with them. They're like, wait, they had 3 women. We have 5 women. They were coming to get our women and bring them down here too. They just didn't come in full force yet. So they're like, what went on down here? Did they bring those women down here to breed with these deep ones? And about that time, they hear somebody call to them from above on the bluffs. And it's Zadok, and he's warning them, don't mess with those poles. Get away from there. Please, please, come up. So they start heading up to talk to him, and that's where we ended up cutting for the night. And that was the end of that episode. We will pick up next week with them meeting with Zadok Allen again and seeing where the messing with stuff they're doing is going and how it's affecting things. I will say that it's been a blast. Everybody's having a great time with it. I have had a great time with not just writing it and running it, but all of my players are really into it. Even my players that are normally heavy combat players are really getting into this role play with this one. I'm not sure why, because we've done Cthulhu type games before, and there will be combat in this. It's a fantasy game. I'm just using Lovecraftian stuff. But there's going to be lots of combat at certain points, but only where it makes sense. Right now, they're starting to peel the layers of the onion back off of this mystery and see what's going on here. And they're finding out that this cult is far more widespread than just the town of Innsmouth. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But it's been 2 sessions, session and a half, and there has been 0 combat. And I really expected my heavy combat players to be I'm ready to hit something. And then when it comes time for them to shine in combat, they will. But it's really impressed me how much they've jumped into the role play aspect of this, the investigation part of it. And honestly, I thought they would have had a combat by now, but they've been very tippy-toe around it, very, very, let's gather all the information we can possibly gather and suss this entire thing out. And I've been really impressed by that, and the role play and the things they've been doing. It's been a lot of fun. I have enjoyed it. We pick up next Tuesday, provided nobody is sick, and we will continue our story in Innsmouth. What is going on there? So, I almost forgot to mention what was in the bundle that they found in the trunk. So let's go back to the night that they saw everything going on at the church. Well, remember they were all together before they went to their respective rooms, and they opened the bundle and found there were 2 items inside. The first item was a smooth stone with a star symbol engraved into it, and an elder sign, the Chaosium version of elder sign. And then the other item was a scroll. Now in my game, scrolls don't pop up under detect magic, because you have to read the scroll to activate it and get the magic off of it. That's just the way I do it. So they had the scroll and the stone, which also is magic. However, it's an item that I created and put in there using the Elder Sign spell. And the reason that it did not pop up under Detect Magic is because it activates whenever touched by an or held by an arcane caster, and it will activate and have an effect that will last for X amount of time. And I can't say what that is right now because I have players that will watch these videos and they don't know. All we know is that one of the magic users, Haley, one of her characters, magic user, picked up the thing and was inspecting it, and she felt the tingling, burning sensation as it kind of latched onto her and activated, and is now doing whatever it is it does for X amount of time, which will become clear in future videos as I do the recaps. And the spell that is on the scroll is called it's a scroll of the deep. And what it does is it allows anyone who reads the scroll, everybody within 10 feet of them gains the ability to breathe underwater for a full day. So those were the two items that were in there, and that's why they didn't pop up under the detect magic, and they didn't realize what they were until later on that night. So had to add that in because I forgot to tell you that they had found that part, and it will become relevant later on. Outside of that, again, having a blast with the game. I realized that I was a bit late getting this week's video up for White Box Weekly. We play on Tuesday nights. I try to record on Wednesdays or Thursday, but this week it's Friday before I'm getting a chance to record. Wednesday was just a busy day. Had a ton of stuff going on, had people coming in and out, and I didn't get a chance to record anything. And then yesterday was just a bad day. I woke up to some bad news that was, a kick in the face at 8 o'clock in the morning, and my day just went downhill from there. It just got, everything was just, sometimes you have a really bad morning and it kind of sets the tone for the entire day. I was like, nope, I don't care about doing a video today. I just want to be alone. And I ended up spending most of the day sitting at my desk painting by myself and not talking to anyone any more than I had to. So it was just, it was just one of those days that was irritating. But I will try to get them up on Wednesdays from now on. But, like I said, this ain't a job, and I'm not going to let it turn into a job. I'm just doing it as I do it. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to like, share, subscribe. Hit up the Amazon wish list, Redbubble store, all that jazz. And until next time, my friends, good gaming and good luck.